One of the reasons I'm going to pick the Eagles to win this game, John, is because kind of good news on the injury front. And I know this can change. It can change in practice today. It can change Saturday or Sunday. Appreciate you streaming on in here on Bird 365 Football Friday. Dallas Cowboys, Philadelphia Eagles, Sunday night. Doesn't get any better than that, specifically this season when the Eagles are the only undefeated team left in the NFL. Damn, that'll be painful if the Cowboys pin their first loss on them. But the Cowboys come in 4-1 themselves, and the Eagles can jump out to a significant lead in the division just 6 weeks in if they find a way to win. While you're at it, why don't you hit that like button? What do we tell them to do here, Johnny Mac?
You got to like, you got to share, you got to subscribe, although I probably said too many nice things about the Cowboys, so it might be tough today.
No, I don't think you've gone overboard at all. So, Eagle fans, we know you're with us on a day like today because coming up is Eagles against Dallas, which doesn't get any better than that for us here in Philadelphia. Thanks to those of you who've already streamed in. Do us a favor, give us a little love. Hit that like button for us on a day that, I'm pretty sure John's going to pick the Cowboys, but I don't want to speak for the Eagles, but I don't want to speak for him. I know I'm going to pick the Eagles. The question is by how many. I'll make that decision in hour number 2. I'm certainly leaning in a direction. One of the reasons I'm going to pick the Eagles to win this game, John, is because kind of good news on the injury front. And I know this can change. It can change in practice today. It can change Saturday or Sunday. You can come in and have absolutely everyone at 100%. You play a couple plays. Oops, 2 guys are hurt. You're screwed. So I get it that you can't make definitive statements about how healthy a team will be when the game gets underway on Sunday, but you can at least lean in certain directions. Kudos to you. I gave you a number yesterday. What I put it at? 7.5?
7.5, which was a very solid number for resting players. The reason I went under is because some of the typical resting players were injured. So they would have injury designations. Jason Kelce would be a rest player, but he was injured. He had an ankle injury. By the way, he had to hobble up the field at some point. So, they're banged up on the offensive line. Isaac Seumalo, probably a resting player, injured. So that number, which would have been over 8, 9, fell down to 6 because guys are banged up.
So I'll ask you to read between the lines here. The Eagles' starting offensive line is going to be who we think of as their starting offensive line is going to be the starting offensive line on Sunday, are they not?
Yes. I think you are going to see the 5 typical usual starters. But the key to me is who's going to finish. I don't know if everybody's going to finish. I know, Lane's fine. Isaac, fine, believe it or not. He was able to get through the Arizona game. The other 3, they're banged up. Jordan Mailata's pretty evident he's going to try to play. Saw him in the locker room. He's going to be wearing one of those harnesses. He can't lift his shoulder over his head. Which you don't necessarily have to do as an offensive lineman, but it's nice when you can do it. So he's really banged up. Landon Dickerson has been working through this foot ankle thing for a number of weeks now. Sua Opeta had to play the majority of the game in Arizona. You might see a similar situation where he's in, he's out. And then Jason Kelce, as I said, I gotta wait till I get down there this morning. But he took a little hit to his ankle in individual drills, and he was in some pain. So those guys are banged up. But Kelce's going to try to go. You know that.
What did he miss? All of 3 plays? And they caught it on camera. So you were in the press box out there in Arizona. So you probably don't have the same feel that I do and 99% of our listeners do watching it on television. They pointed it out pretty quickly and showed that Jason came limping off the field and on the sidelines, them attending to him. And it seemed like it was going to be a bigger deal than it turned out to be, because in reality, only missed 3 snaps, right, John?
Yeah, 3 snaps. It was right before halftime. And then, we're all like, all right, Kelsey's done. And I don't know why I keep falling for that trap. And all of a sudden, he's got his helmet, comes out, he's ready to go. And he finishes the game. But he is a human being. And what I will say is he's not at optimal level. So, a lot of these things are like, I think fans too often, Jody, say, all right, Mailata's playing. All right, Kelsey's playing. Dickerson's playing. Yeah, they're going to try to play because it's a big game, but they're not healthy. They're not their typical selves. And that could have an impact on the game.
And I know you and I have talked about this before, and if you want to give me the Pro Football Focus numbers, feel free. Just judging by watching on TV, not watching coaching film or breakdown or whatever. I think Jack Driscoll has been damn close to great the last 2 weeks. Mailata gets hurt early in the Jacksonville game. He goes in, does a pretty damn phenomenal job. I thought he was great. He didn't give up any sacks. When they needed to run it late, they ran it both right, left, and up the middle behind Driscoll. We've acknowledged that Driscoll is as much a guard as he is a tackle, and they're asking him to play tackle. His most comfortable side is the right side. They're asking him to play the left side. All those things lined up against him. And, oh, by the way, you're replacing one of the best left tackles in football. And I didn't see much of a drop-off at all. So I'm giving major props to Jack Driscoll in the way that he played. I say this all because I got a question. If Dickerson is the guy who ends up having to leave the game, that Kelsey guts it out. Why? Because Kelsey always guts it out. That Seumalo is able to stay on the field, not succumb to the injury, and goes wire to wire. If Dickerson is the guy who needs to come out because his injury is just bothering him so much, do you just plug in Opeta because he's a more natural guard? Or do you actually ask Driscoll, who's been on that left side, out at tackle, to jump into the left guard position? If the one guy of the starters who's out happens to be Dickerson, who would you put in there?
Sua would go in for Landon. Remember, Jeff Stoutland's not a fan of moving pieces. So he goes into a game with a plan. And Sua's been the guy, right guard, left guard. Now, I think right guard would be more interesting. The one, Jack has done a tremendous job, never played left tackle before until he played left tackle. So he's never played left guard before. But, you could argue what I just said. The more interesting thing to me would be right guard. If
Isaac's out?
Yeah, because if Jordan is playing, if Jordan's the left tackle, there's a couple interesting things. So I should say, if Jordan's the left tackle and he's fine, and then Seumalo sprains his ankle again, and you have Jack Driscoll, then that's a more interesting conversation. That's one where I would say I would put Jack Driscoll in there. That to me, I don't know what Jeff Stoutland would do. If you force me, I'd probably say Sua at this point, to be honest. But I would go Jack Driscoll.
See, I've been so impressed with the way Driscoll has played. I want him as my number one sub off the bench any way you slice it.
Yeah, well, the Eagles have to remember here, and here's the bigger thing, Andre Dillard. Because there is a good chance that Jordan Mailata does not finish this game. He is not healthy. He's going to try. I think he's going to try. Now, I might get down there this morning, and he might have tried yesterday, and they might shut it down. And then you have the conversation. But I can tell you yesterday, Jack Driscoll was back working on the right side. And it was Jordan Mailata and Andre Dillard at left tackle. So to me, those are the bigger questions. what happens? Are they ready to get Andre back in the mix? Because and all those accolades you gave Jack Driscoll, I agree with, and most of them because he's never played the position before and he really held up well. But man, this is Micah Parsons, and they are going to put Micah Parsons on Jack Driscoll. It's not going to be, no, we're going to move him here, we're going to move him there. They're going to put him on Jack Driscoll if he's playing left tackle. And I think the Eagles are very cognizant of that. And I think they want Jordan Mailata out there, or they want Andre Dillard out there. And by the way, they probably can't block him either. But
I was going to say, John, and maybe I am putting too much stock into what Driscoll did the past 2 weeks. To me, he was better than Andre Dillard's ever been. Pick Andre Dillard's best game of his career and match that against what Driscoll's done the last 2 weeks at left tackle. I'll take what Driscoll's done. I don't know that, okay, we got Andre Dillard, let's plug him back in there just because that's been his position forever. I'll judge off what I saw the last 2 weeks. If it's not Mailata, yeah, the Eagles are getting squeezed. It's going to be a tough matchup for either one of them. I got more confidence in Driscoll.
Well, I could tell you the Eagles definitely don't agree with you. He played well under very difficult circumstances. He did not play well against Jacksonville. He played better, especially in pass protection. He played better against Arizona, but it wasn't top tier level or anything like that. He played very well for a third string left tackle and probably held up better than any other third string left tackle. I will look it up. I'll see what the film says. Pro Football Focus has him 53 of 72 at tackle. So, it wasn't great. It was better than it should be. But yeah, they want a legitimate left tackle out there, because then it becomes, and again, George's not healthy, so they're still probably going to lean towards putting Parsons over Jordan Mailata versus Lane Johnson. But you make it more difficult. You just, to expect Jack Driscoll to deal with Micah Parsons, that's a lot.
I understand that, but I would say the same thing about a guy who hasn't played a snap in a game
well,
yet.
That's true too.
And
true too.
When he's been healthy, is
to expect anybody, to expect an injured player, to expect somebody who hasn't been playing, to expect Jack Driscoll. It's a tough matchup. It's a tough matchup, no matter what.
Eagle fans, you better hope that Jordan Mailata is able to start and finish this game on Sunday. Now, Johnny Mack has to appreciate the Dallas Cowboys and the way they played defenses the first 5 weeks, because they lead the National Football League in pressures. They're second in sacks, but they actually lead the National Football League, and by a lot. It's not by just like 2 or 3. Yeah. They've got like 15 more pressures than the second most team.
Eagles fans would love that defense. Their aggression, they would love it. Love it.
Well, the aggression comes from the front four, because John also sent me the amount of percentage of blitzes on plays, and both the Cowboys and the Eagles are in the bottom 10 in the National Football League. What were the numbers you sent me yesterday?
19th and 20th. They're right next to each other.
20th. Okay.
Like 25.3 for the Cowboys, 25% for the Eagles.
Yeah. So neither team leans heavily on the blitz. They like to get there with their down 4, and they've both done a pretty damn good job of it, as a matter of fact. So yeah, the Cowboys are going to make Jalen Hurts feel it. As good as the Eagles' offensive line is, and I do think we have to keep that in mind, I don't know that the Cowboys have faced a great offensive line in any of the games. Cincinnati put a lot of resources into it at the beginning of the year, but they haven't had any results. Joe
No.
Burrow is still out there sprinting and trying to make plays
Well,
on the run.
part of that is Joe's fault. But you're right; they don't have a good offensive line. But part of it is the quarterback's fault. When you take that many sacks, you gotta
Oh,
get rid of them.
Thank you very much for saying that. Sunday I do Eye on Football with Zach Gelb around the National Football League show. I jump in for the last 2 hours of his 8-hour marathon, and I said the same exact thing. Burrow is so good and so cocky that he holds on to the football.
Yeah.
He just waits and waits and waits and waits and waits and believes one of the star wide receivers is going to get open. So you're right. He does cause some of those sacks, but their offensive line isn't good in Cincinnati. The Giants' offensive line is nothing special. The Rams' offensive line, one guy retires and it seems to come apart at the seams. Now, I know how good a guy he was, but their offensive line isn't much at all. They have seen nowhere near as good an offensive line as the Eagles, if healthy, and we're putting that qualifier on it.
Well,
if healthy, are as good as the Eagles are.
Well, the Eagles have the best offensive line in football. The Eagles fans are spoiled with this. We're talking about Jack Driscoll, the third left tackle who could start on some of these teams. The Eagles' offensive line is off the charts. You can't play a better offensive line than the Eagles because there is no better offensive line. So that's number one. They are really, really banged up, though. So they're not performing at an optimum level at this stage. And that's, what the Cowboys will have to take advantage of. But when the Eagles are healthy, I always talk about Packers fans being spoiled with the quarterback position. Eagles fans are spoiled with the offensive line. They do not realize. You just talked about the Rams, the Super Bowl champions, lose a 40-year-old left tackle. They don't know what to do.
Nope.
They don't know what to do. The Eagles fans are so spoiled with the offensive line and Jeff Stoutland and what he's been able to do. They don't know how the other half lives in this league. The Cowboys had a great offensive line for years, but it was talent driven. Tyron Smith, Travis Frederick, Zach Martin, Lyle Collins. They had good players. Now that they've lost some injury, attrition, free agency, they're struggling. They got Jason Peters trying to play left guard. Zach Martin's still there, but that's it. They got a rookie first-round pick playing left tackle. Probably shouldn't have been a first-round pick. Terrence Steele, I guess, is playing pretty well. They don't know how the other half lives, Eagles fans, when it comes to the offensive line.
But the Cowboys, even with that only at average at best offensive line, have been effective running the football this year. That's why you can plug in a guy like Cooper Rush, who isn't going to wow anybody, who isn't going to drop back and throw for 304 touchdowns. No, they still are a running team, run first team. And I think they have to stick with that against the Eagles this week. So this turns out to be a big game for the Eagles defense in the ability to slow the run, if not stop the run. Last week, Johnny Mac, the Eagles linebackers easily had their worst week of the season. Both Edwards and Kaiser White threw in their biggest clunker, and they both happened to do so on the same week. The Eagles made James Conner look pretty good carrying the football last week, and the combination of Zeke and Pollard this week is better than what James Conner brought to the table last week. How big a game is this for the Eagles linebackers?
Yeah, I don't know. I expect them to bounce back. Similar, it was more the entire defense in Detroit. Was more the linebackers in Arizona. A lot of missed tackles. TJ doesn't usually miss tackles. I expect that to be sort of self-correcting. I don't think that's going to be a consistent thing. I don't. Ezekiel Elliott's a big name, but I don't think he scares anybody at this point. Tony Pollard's their better running back.
I agree.
Because they pay Zeke Elliott what they pay Zeke Elliott, they don't use him. Well, in part, he's not the biggest guy in the world either, but he's been really effective. and he doesn't have the big name, but he's the guy I'd be more concerned with when it comes to the Cowboys running game rather than Ezekiel Elliott. I want him to hand the ball to Ezekiel Elliott. If he gets going, it's first of all, he's not going to make big plays. It's going to be 4, 5, 6 yards. Pollard can gouge you.
Yes.
Pollard can gouge you. And he's the bigger concern to me.
I agree wholeheartedly, but both of the guys can move the sticks. They're kind of guys who Zeke, who came into the league as a big play kind of guy, has turned into a move the chains kind of guy.
Yeah, exactly.
And he runs stronger. He just isn't going to break big. Pollard is their home run hitter out of their two backs, but either one of them can do it. I think the Cowboys are going to lean on. I think they're going to try and run the ball, even though the Eagles have as good and as stout a defensive line as they do. And yes, it'd be very interesting to see the percentage of downs that Jordan Davis gets. Because number one, he's coming off the best game that he's ever had. I know, 5 deep, but it's the best game that he's ever had. Number two, I think the Cowboys are going to try and run the football, and defensive assignments are given by what they think the other team is going to do. Jordan Davis is on the field when the defense coordinator thinks Cowboys are probably going to run the ball on this play. I think they're going to run it a lot, so I think Jordan Davis's numbers will be up this week. Agree or disagree?
I agree. He's getting more snaps. He's a 2-down player at this point. I mean, it's not going to improve dramatically. I think when people look at rep counts, they don't take into effect that his role right now is that 5-1 or 5-2 setup, playing on the nose or shade, stop, burst down, stop, second down, get the 3rd and long. That's his role. So if it's, if 1st and 10 turns into 2nd and 9, or even better, 2nd and 11, he's doing his job. And that sets the Eagles up for success on 3rd down. So it's not going to be a huge spike. He's very important. He's got a very important role. He's a very important part. He should dominate Dallas's center, who I can never pronounce his last name, but he's not Travis Frederick. I can tell you that. Now, Zach Martin, that guy's going to the Hall of Fame. He's the bigger concern, but I think he's a bigger concern for Fletcher and Javon Hargrave. I think Jordan Davis is going to be an issue for the Cowboys.
So do I. And he needs to be an issue for the Cowboys because I think the Cowboys are going to look to try and run the football. I think this is going to be more of a ball control game than maybe some other people think. I think both these teams have been able to rely on the run. And when I say the run with the Eagles, that includes Jalen Hurts keeping it a couple of times for sticks moving 1st downs. I do not think it's going to be a major passing affair. If you set the over-under on quarterback yards for 250 for either of the two quarterbacks, I think I'd take the under on both.
I definitely take the under on Cooper. Jalen's tough with those because it might be one, big play, and it blows you up if you want to go under. But I would lean towards under. Yeah, the Eagles want to run the football as well, because of the pass rush, and you mentioned with all the sacks and all the pressures, and I want to run at Micah Parsons. I don't want to let him chase my quarterback. I want to run. He's an undersized edge player. So run the football right at him with your offensive line if they're healthy enough.
Agree. All right, Johnny Mac, we know we got to let you run, but you're not going anywhere without giving us a prediction on the game. Eagles 5-0 against the 4-1 Cowboys. They're a 6.5-point favorite. I told you the ridiculousness that the opening line was at -1. It has rightfully gotten to where it should be. I knew it was going to be in the 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5. So it's at the high end of it. It's a 6.5-point spread, which Vegas is doing the proper thing and showing respect to the Eagles, unlike the Marcus Lawrence. How do you think this one plays out? What do you think the game looks like in the 59th minute?
I think the Eagles are the better team. If Dak Prescott was healthy, completely healthy, and playing at a high level, I still think they're the better team. They're the more well-rounded team. I'm a little bit concerned about the health of that offensive line. That's the only thing I'm concerned about. I think the Eagles win, and I think it's not that difficult, to be honest. I think 27-18-ish is where I'm going in this game. So they cover and they win.
Get the win and the cover. All right. We're you and I are similar. Not exactly the same, but we're in the same ballpark. All right. Safe travels. Tell Coach Nick off the record. Tell Coach off the record I say hi. On the record, I say, go get him, Coach. But off the record, just tell him.
Competitive advantage. Don't say it on the air, Jody.
That's all right. I got no secrets here. I'm not going to have anything to do with the outcome of Sunday's game. Johnny Mac's going to run. Jeff Kerr, our bud from Good Morning NFC East is going to hop on with us. I jumped on with him, so he's going to jump on with me. And John Machota from The Athletic, who covers the Cowboys day in, day out, going to stop in with us next hour here on Birds 365.